Sonic Project Hero is a name many of you already may be familiar with. Released in 2019, this fan game served as a foundation and proof of concept for a more physics-oriented Sonic fan game. This thing blew everyone, and I mean everyone, away. Despite being nothing more than a small test level, this small demo had everyone hooked. It showed definitive proof of how mesmerizing slope physics in a 3D environment could be. Taking most of its cues from the classics, I'd argue this demo was the best implementation of slope physics within any 3D Sonic game. At the very least, it was top 3. Everything about it just felt perfect. You really had to earn your speed, hardly was it ever given to you, and that made every new kilometer of speed you gained feel truly rewarding. Sonic had a relatively simple moveset, being limited to the roll, spin dash, jump, drop dash, bounce, and this little sweep kick for hitting enemies while on the move. It was very simple and each move felt warranted, even the sweep as it had some potential for combat. Tails and Knuckles were in this game as well, with their own original movesets to boot. The game was great, and even today, this rather aimless test level is still regarded as one of the greats in terms of fan games, and I have to also agree with that. Unfortunately, after this, the state of the project will get a little shaky. Time passed and the project persisted, eventually shifting into one that tried resembling the classics more and more, explicitly giving the characters those original designs. This change, though, depressingly, caused the creator to receive a lot of unwarranted harassment simply for the stylistic change alone. And while this may not have been the only reason why, around 2023, it was officially announced that the project was done. And it was a shame. For the longest time, the legacy of this game was the one demo from 2019 everyone loved, and a few screenshots posted of the newer iteration of the game that would never be released. Until suddenly, out of nowhere with zero build-up, Hiro, the creator, decided to randomly post on the Sonic Fangames HQ site the 2021 build of Sonic Project Hero for everybody to play. This is crazy. I think it was logical to expect that we would never see anything about this project ever again. After all, it was explicitly cancelled. And while the project is still cancelled, we were left with a parting gift of the build of the game from 2021. Now, before I talk about this anymore, I want to preface that you should not ask or harass Hiro to continue working on this game. It is completely up to him if he ever wants to revisit it, but realistically, he won't, and I think while that may suck for us, that is completely reasonable and everybody should respect his decision. It's not our game. Real quick, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe, and if you want to go the extra mile and get early access to new videos, subscribe to my Patreon. Now, with all that out of the way, I will try my best to not make this sound like recency bias or me going through a honeymoon phase, but I do not exaggerate in the slightest when I say this might be genuinely the contender for the greatest fan game ever made. This new demo doesn't offer a ton in terms of straight content when you look at it on the surface. You're given 3 playable characters with simple yet unique movesets, an unfinished special stage, and a single act that lasts but a minute on average. That's not a lot. Imagine if Sonic Mania dropped, but only Green Hill Act 2. I mean, sure, people would love it a lot, but claiming it's the best of something, it's kind of crazy, right? Well, I think the reason I love Project Hero so much is simply because, it's kind of exactly what I want. Hiro has essentially created a near-perfect translation of the classics into 3D. Fan games have attempted this before to varying degrees of success, but usually said games are limited to very small test levels that never get a chance to have their full potential shine. And while that is technically the case here, there's a stark difference. We actually have a level. And while it has its flaws, while it may not be perfect, I truly believe this may be the greatest level to ever come out of a fan game, and one of the greatest levels in the franchise. And all it is a single classic Sonic stage, but in 3D. This proves to me that an official game that translates the classics into 3D would likely be the greatest Sonic game ever made, because as it is, fuck dude, I mean this one almost is, and it's one fucking act. Obviously the demo won't be constantly replayed for years on end. I will likely play other official games way more often because again, one act, that's 1 minute long. But this one act is genuinely like moving and inspiring. It confirms all of my suspicions about the quality a game like this could have while also managing to surpass my expectations. So let's talk a little more in depth about this level, why don't we? This level, like I've said before, for the most part is the implementation of classic Sonic level design philosophies creatively twisted ever so slightly to work in a 3D environment. Rather than several layers stacked on top of one another, usually paths are simply side by side at different elevations. This isn't new at all to 3D Sonic games, but I thought I'd point it out. This level is the perfect demonstration of the beautifully crafted physics for this game and how it fundamentally changes how you play the game from a moment-to-moment basis. Now, one thing I'll say this level gets wrong is the lost focus on platforming. A lot of fan games fall under this same trap of having the level mostly be slopes while sweeping the actual platforming side of things under the rug. Platforming is not the focus of the stage, and I think that's my only real gripe with it. However, I think this largely works considering its status as a first level. Now, it's impossible to talk about this level without mentioning the physics. The 2019 demo was already praised for its physics, and that praise was deserved. However, not only were they improved noticeably more, I'd go as far as to say they were perfected. This is straight up classic Sonic. These are physics from those classic games pretty much one-to-one. Now, there are probably slight inaccuracies with the physics that I'm not smart enough to pick up on. However, this checks all of the boxes. Never has terrain felt more like an extension of your moveset. This was something that existed in the classics, but I feel like that feeling is amplified when put into that third dimension. You're really able to feel all the subtleties of Sonic's speed and movement when interacting with the lightest of changes in elevation. Terrain that ever so slightly curves up, you're able to notice your speed lower, usually at lower speeds yourself when any change in speed feels drastic. The downward slopes also feel so substantial. One thing Hero has done is made it so you can curl and uncurl on the fly, meaning if there's a downwards change in elevation followed by an upwards one, you can curl down the hill, then uncurl so you don't lose as much speed when going up the next hill, all while not having to jump out of your ball form. I'm not sure how much of this is intentional or not, but the way the level is structured is so perfect and lends itself so much to experimentation via physics. The level goes forward for a bit before doing a rather sharp turnaround, then another gradual turn to the right. What this means is that that large mountain to your left during one of the earlier parts of the level is actually a piece of level from later on. And ever so conveniently around this bit exists a single sharp curved slope, and another more subtle upward slope a few steps away from it. By taking advantage of your speed and by putting your knowledge of Sonic's slope physics to the test, you're able to chain together these two slopes and essentially have them act as half pipes, letting you, with skill, launch yourself to the top of this mountain and skip an entire chunk of the level. This is both an incredible testament to how brilliant these physics were translated and implemented, but also demonstrates a perfect example of good skipping. People give flack to a lot of fan games for the large amount of skipping you're able to do, which usually can be done pretty easily. This is not the case. This is not a super easy thing to pull off. It requires so much thought and prior knowledge of the physics. This skip is never given to you, and it's something I don't even attempt in over half my runs because, well, it's pretty hard. I've seen people on Twitter argue about this skip, calling it just another 3D Sonic fan game skip, when I have to disagree. I think this argument falls apart when you realize a lot of the skips in 3D Sonic fan games are very easy to pull off, and this one is not. Just because a skip is substantial doesn't automatically mean it's bad. It's how you skip and the skills required to skip that determine its worth, I guess. Other skips you can perform include straight up going out of bounds, but the terrain at the top feels so natural that, while clearly unintended, still almost feels like a natural part of the level. Now, I should probably talk about the moveset, the tools at your disposal that help you traverse the level the best you can. The basics return, like the spin dash, drop dash, and bounce, yet the bounce itself was heavily tweaked and something else was added. Wall running. Oh my god. This wall running should be standard for any Sonic game ever, I'll be honest. Depending on your speed, when air dashing on a wall, which, oh yeah, air dashing you see here, you'll run on a wall at different speeds. This adds an entirely new layer of interactivity to these levels. Suddenly walls, which in every other game would have acted as, well, just that, walls, they now turn into movement opportunities. Suddenly these walls are just another part of the level design. It's absolutely brilliant, and it was such a neat choice to add something like this and other non-classic moves like the bounce. It shows Hero had a real vision for this. It's more than just a replica of the classics. It genuinely innovates on things while not compromising on any of the philosophies present in the classics. The wall run is such a brilliant addition to Sonic's moveset and feels like a natural next step for a classic Sonic in 3D. And it works perfectly in this level. Now, this level does have flaws, but they don't really make the level, like, worse, if I'm being honest. The direction of the level during this cave section tripped me up slightly on my first playthrough, but after that, I immediately understood where I needed to go in every other playthrough. The other flaws mainly stem from the demo simply being unfinished. There's a water section that doesn't really have a proper way out of it, so if you land in it, you probably just gotta restart. However, I can ignore this as number one. If I fell into the water anyways, I would restart because I messed up my run. And number two, it's unfinished. Also, the level itself is only like a minute long at high level play. That's crazy. And it shows how good this level is. Because all of this praise is going towards a level that I can usually beat in just a single minute. If that isn't telling of the game's quality, I don't know what is. Now, one thing I hear people not like about this game is that they say it falls under the trap that most fan games do of being very empty with not much to do, and I can't say I agree. The level itself, while unfinished, it's very clearly realized a good bit. It is open, sure, but there is stuff to do with that openness. The only thing I think is a flaw is the lack of any real enemies or obstacles like spikes. You have some enemies that do nothing near the start, but aside from that, there's nothing. I think people looking at this and automatically saying there's nothing to do in it are kind of wrong. Just because there aren't plenty of objects like springs, dash pads, dash rings, and what have you, doesn't make it empty. It's all about interacting with your terrain, and there is plenty of terrain to interact with. However, I do get the criticism that it's empty when it comes to any real obstacles. Then again, it's hard to be too harsh when it's very clearly unfinished. Now, I should probably mention the other playable characters briefly. Tails and Knuckles, and oh my god, these are also just perfect evolutions of their movesets from the classics. So both of them retain the spin dash, but neither of them retain the drop dash. For Tails, he can instead fly, and for Knuckles, he glides. Everything after that is completely original, though. Tails has two new moves. First, he's able to do this tail spin for an attack, which, being honest, is completely useless, but I don't mind very much because, again, unfinished. And he also has this little charge flight where you can briefly charge him up as it comes to a standstill and aim him towards a certain direction and he'll zip over there. This is balanced incredibly well considering he travels the same distance he normally would when flying, only now you're given the option to zip over there quickly instead of gradually flying over. The whole standstill thing may sound sort of pace breaking, but I assure you it's not, it flows wonderfully. As for Knuckles, he's able to charge up on walls and launch up like he could in the 2019 demo, and like Tails' tail sweep, it's pretty useless. But also, like Tails, his other move is incredible. Knuckles is able to do this burrowing move, where pushing the button with Knuckles has him burrow under the ground and pop out once the button is released, or if he flies off a slope. On its own, it's nothing crazy, but it acts as this souped-up drop dash, essentially. The properties it carries on slopes mean that on a downward slope, Knuckles will gain a lot of speed, most evidence with those two slopes I mentioned way earlier. Knuckles can also chain these two together and use them as half-pipes, but because of the slightly different properties, Knuckles has an easier time more quickly pulling off the skip. The only downside is that the move is pretty situational. Its big use case scenario is only really there, but it still has some small utilizations every now and then. And finally, special stages. While obviously very unfinished, I honestly kinda love the concept. The whole special stage is about you using your momentum to roll around these large chunks of rock, and then slope jump to gain enough height to make your way to the next one, and so on and so forth. It's really cool, and I honestly like the fact that it doesn't change the playstyle at all like every other special stage in the series does. So to end it off, Project Hero is amazing. I already loved that 2019 demo to death, and to see an updated version, even if unfinished, is a bigger send-off than I could ever ask for. I would love to see a full game like this someday. Maybe not from Hero, as I said before, I don't even want to suggest the idea of asking him to continue on the project, but maybe from someone else. Maybe even Sonic Team themselves, that'd be pretty great. While the game itself may have some untapped potential due to its length, it was able to fully prove itself, and I'm so glad it did. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, you know the drill. Join my Patreon if you want to support me even more, go play Project Hero, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.